After Russian interference in the 2016 election, there were concerns about election hacking in 2020. Officials from the Secret Service, the Department of Justice, and the FBI attended Operation Blackout.
It all started here.
For the KGB, the United States became enemy number one. The Cold War had begun.
Mr. Bezmenov was born in 1939 in a suburb of Moscow.
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process.
Ideological subversion, or active measures, is also known as psychological warfare, or PSYOP. Its main aim is to influence emotions, motives, reasoning, and behaviors of people, governments, and organizations. It allows conveying information to people so that they take decisions which are favorable to their opponent by playing with their emotions, attitudes, and behaviors. With the internet and social media, psychological warfare is easier than ever before. Psychological operations are used by governments and armies from all around the world because they are very effective, as we have seen in the US elections in 2016. Some use case examples of it are: the first use case is to project a favorable image of resistance of the opposition or project an unfavorable image of the existing government. The second use case is where the plan is to establish a specific point of view in the target audience mind to elect a particular candidate. The third case is where it has and can be used to exploit ethnic, cultural, religious, or economic differences to divide a country's population. Result of this is people can reach a consensus and will not focus on important problems affecting the country, thus causing a political paralysis. Types of PSYOP content. There are basically three types of content that is used in operations. The first type is white content, or true content, which is acknowledged officially by the governments and is based on the facts. The second type is gray content, or misinformation. This content is misleading content and is meant to be deliberately ambiguous, not letting the population know exactly the truth, or at least meant to confuse them. And the third type is black content, and it can be of two types. First is the disinformation, such as complete falsehoods, forgeries, or fictitious declarative statements, and second is malinformation, like leaked documents. All this content can be spread via video, audio, news articles, conspiracy theories, paid advertisement, in traditional television media or digital media, memes, or fake social media profiles. What is the process of successful PSYOP? These operations use the following process. 1. Defining the mission. 2. Mapping the actual situation. 3. Development of PSYOP plan. 4. Media selection and content development. 5. Pre-testing to determine the probable impact of the content on the selected audience. 6. Production and dissemination of the content. 7. Evaluation of the whole implementation. 8. Feedback on the operation to make it better. The plan focuses on race, class, gender, sexual orientation, political affiliation, or geography. They do this by 1. Polarizing and disrupting unity in the society by dividing them. 2. Undermining public confidence in democratic institutions and processes, spreading confusion, generating frustration, and creating apathy. 3. By diminishing consensus, adversaries can potentially cause political paralysis. 4. Create a fifth column in the society that supports the adversary. Of course, these operations are being executed by different governments, but some of them have been known to use them more than others. Reflexive control theory is in fact a complete formal research program developed by the Russian military. It does not try to convince people in political party A that they are in conflict with those from political party B. It assumes this conflict already exists. Instead, these information efforts try to amplify the degree that people from party A believe that those from party B view them as adversaries. Russia's Internet Research Agency, or IRA, for example, is a state-sponsored operation started in St. Petersburg, Russia, in 2013. Their objective has been to divide Americans on key political, social, and religious views, to weaken national unity, and distract the whole population from more critical threats. They actually applied PSYOPs to achieve voter suppression and influence the 2016 presidential election. They did this by creating confusion around voting processes, redirecting voters to third-party candidates, and discouraging people from voting in the election. In 2016 elections, IRA's operations managed to reach 126 million people on Facebook, 20 million users on Instagram, 1.4 million users on Twitter, and over 1,000 videos uploaded to YouTube. China. The Communist Party, CCP, is always working to protect its reputation and to control democracy in other parts of the world. Chinese advanced persistent threat groups are responsible for this. Twitter reported that there were thousands of accounts belonging to the Beijing government, even though the social network is banned in this country. The same happened with YouTube, where Google blocked 2,500 channels that were used to create conflicts between blacks and whites, even though YouTube is banned in China. U.S. In the United States Department of Defense, psychological operations units exist as the Army's 4th Psychological Operations Group and 8th Psychological Operations Group. There are other Army, Air Force, and Navy groups that work closely with the CIA. The United States has shown its PSYOPs power in the Gulf War, Korea, Vietnam, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and in many more countries. How do these countries influence over election processes? At first, psychological influence was used during World War I, when print media and radio broadcasts were used to influence the population. But now, the target is social media's millions of unsuspecting users whose viewpoint towards government is the target. As per research, it is proven that before a government election, 30% of the voters have decided for a candidate, 35% are undecided, and 35% can be influenced. There are mainly 4 methods of meddling that are used. First is actually changing votes via some backdoor in electronic voting machines. Second is manipulating the information that can change decisions of voters. Third is obstructing votes so people can vote. And fourth is undermining confidence in voting. Influencing political decisions is a long process. The work begins about few years before the election by making use of 1. Mass surveillance, 2. Keywords and metadata accumulation, including names of parties or candidates, 3. Geographic analysis and segmentation of population, 4. Exposing the political candidates or press media that are against the adversaries. 5. Geomarketing using digital media and traditional media focused on people identified. Of course, private companies help governments and political parties in this process, but not without expecting something in return. A government or political party cannot legally allocate money to companies just because they help them reach power. Governments or political parties have different ways of paying for these favors, such as promised long-term business, privatization of markets, and even reforms that favor certain companies. Steps to influence electoral processes. Mass surveillance for collecting keywords and metadata. Mass surveillance is basically when public or private actors control and compile a lot of information about people's behavior through their phones, computers, and other devices. Different techniques to do mass digital surveillance are intercepting mobile communications. In summary, surveillance of cell phones, calls, messages, and emails using string array or IMSI interceptors. If you want further information on how someone can intercept your calls using one of these devices, you can watch our video that will appear on top of the screen. Collection of metadata via telecommunication companies and social media. The massive collection of metadata via telecom providers and social media is a sophisticated form of surveillance. Everyone is under systemized surveillance, since the companies that offer these services are forced to collect and to preserve the metadata of the communications of their users. This type of metadata can be a digital diary of a person's daily life. You can see textually what they do, what political parties they support, based on the keywords detected during their calls or messages, and even what their routines are like, if they've moved from place to place, to whom they are nearby, and how their social circle is organized. Companies and governments collect around 50 billion records per month. These include browsing histories, searches, emails, and online chats. Backdoors on smart devices. Cybersecurity experts have discovered backdoors in mobile devices that can affect millions of people. These backdoors can be pre-installed on devices or are generated by cybercriminals. When they are pre-installed, the security holes in the code cause personal information to be sent to the device manufacturers. Many Chinese phones or apps like CTE and TikTok have backdoors that the Chinese government uses to collect data. Geographic analysis and segmentation of population. Political geomarketing is a marketing methodology that allows analyzing the situation of a political party based on a mass surveillance study that shows which geographic areas have which preferences for certain candidates and what is the profile of people with that preference, locating them on a digital map. The metadata collected can help a political party know which zones, states, or zip codes they need to focus on. All this information is used to market a particular candidate or expose a political party in an area using digital advertisements or fake news in targeted areas. They also make use of Google, Facebook advertisements, and of course, fake news campaigns on social networks. The population study already made with the collected data allows geographic segmentation operations, defining which political party advertisements appear in which geographical locations, depending upon the previous searches of people or zones within a country or based on their metadata. This metadata is then being used to intentionally display ads of political parties or spread fake news against another political party in social networks like Facebook, Google, and Twitter. This is how Cambridge Analytica data was used to do geomarketing. Mass surveillance in traditional media. Traditional media can be more relevant in changing the opinion of all generations. In terms of credibility, traditional media has more relevance since it has a better reputation than new digital media. Using the data already obtained from mass surveillance about political preferences and geographic segmentation, political parties work with traditional media companies like newspapers, radio stations, television news channels, and cable operators. Also, political parties can control cable operators to change the channel number or remove particular news channels that opposes a particular political party or the present government. The population analysis is carried out based on the geographical segmentation, identifying certain inclinations in particular areas, and the opposition is attacked with propaganda, thus reinforcing the presence of a certain candidate or political party in the area. Physical announcements. These are commonly found in the hands of private companies and have the greatest advantage in terms of visibility. If a billboard is placed in a suitable location based on data from mass surveillance and geosegmentation, it can easily attract the gaze of hundreds of thousands daily. Using these tactics, Russia achieved polarization of the US population, dividing them on color, race, and political affiliation, thus undermining public confidence in democratic institutions and spreading confusion. All this has reduced the probability that the people will try to resolve important issues like poverty, student loans, and climate change, and focuses on issues like blacks and whites. The next objective of the Russian and Chinese psychological warfare is to destabilize the US dollar economy and create a fifth column in the US society that supports them. Will they achieve this objective? You will get this answer after the next elections. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, like and share.